They were safe inside, for now. But the palace held secrets, and Ethan knew that their survival depended on understanding them quickly. Across the chamber, the alien figure had moved. The stasis tube was cracked wider, and Lysera, the princess of a civilization long thought lost, opened her eyes. They were deep pools of silver, reflecting the faint light like mirrored glass. She rose gracefully from the tube, her movements precise and controlled. The hum of energy that seemed to fill the palace intensified around her. Ethan felt a strange pull in his mind, a quiet echo of her presence. He shook it off, telling himself it was exhaustion or imagination. He had seen humans in life-or-death situations do strange things. Yet the sensation lingered, a subtle warmth at the edges of his thoughts. Lysera's gaze swept the room, resting briefly on the human crew. There was no fear, only curiosity and something deeper, a recognition of resilience. She had been frozen in stasis for centuries, yet humans had survived the storm, adapted to the wreckage, and navigated the palace with intelligence she had never expected. They were fragile, yet astonishingly clever. Ethan stepped forward cautiously.
"Are you awake?"
His voice was steady, but his heart raced. He had faced hostile alien species before, but nothing like this. Lysera regarded him with a tilt of her head, her movements slow and deliberate. "I am," she said, her voice melodic, almost vibrating in resonance with the palace itself. "You survived the storm."
"That is impressive," Mira whispered behind him. "She speaks."
In perfect human language. Ethan nodded. And she knows more than we do about this place. He studied Lysera, noting the elegance of her form, the way the light reflected off her silver hair, the calm authority in her posture. She was regal, but not threatening, yet. Humans had survived worse, he reminded himself, and they had adapted. That adaptability had saved them time and again. Lysera stepped closer to Ethan, her eyes locking with his. "You were close to death when you arrived. I felt your struggle, your will to survive. It is remarkable." Her words were sincere, yet there was something beneath them, a subtle current that tugged at Ethan's thoughts. He forced himself to stay grounded, focusing on survival. "What are you?" he asked finally. The question slipped out more urgently than intended. "Are you the ruler of this place? Or something else?" "I am Lysera, last of my people," she replied softly. "This palace was once a seat of knowledge and power. My civilization, we were destroyed, trapped by our own war. I was preserved, awaiting those who might awaken me." She glanced at the humans around them, noting the exhaustion, the frostbite, the injuries. "You are the first outsiders to reach this place, and yet you have survived." Ethan's mind raced. Humanity's cleverness had saved them from the storm, from the crash, from the frozen wilderness outside. But could it survive here, with an alien princess watching, judging, and perhaps influencing their thoughts? He shook his head, trying to dispel the strange warmth creeping through his mind. "We need shelter, warmth, supplies," he said firmly. "We aren't here for politics or history. We need to survive." Lysera's lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "Of course. Survival first. But survival is never simple, is it, human?" She moved toward a nearby wall, pressing her hand against it. The surface rippled, responding to her touch. Panels slid open, revealing a storage chamber filled with strange devices, glowing with alien energy. Ethan approached cautiously. "Are those weapons? Some are defensive. Others are tools of creation," Lysera explained. "They require understanding, but I can guide you." Her voice carried a quiet authority that commanded attention. Ethan felt the pull again, subtle and insistent, as if her mind brushed against his, urging him to trust her. He resisted, grounding himself in logic. Humans adapted through intelligence, not surrendering to influence. "Let's focus on what we can use," Ethan said. "We need heat. We need protection. And we need to stabilize the rest of the crew." Lysera nodded. "Very well. Follow me." She moved with grace, leading them to a section of the palace where warmth radiated naturally. Strange crystalline structures emitted gentle heat, melting the frost from the floor and walls. The humans shed layers, grateful for the comfort, yet wary. Ethan's instincts were sharp. Alien beauty could conceal danger, and he would not let it cloud his judgment. As the crew tended to themselves and their equipment, Ethan noticed subtle changes in his thoughts. Memories of sharing the bed the night before seemed different. They were warmer, more vivid, tinged with feelings he could not fully explain. Survival necessity and proximity had blurred. He shook his head. Humans remembered clearly. They relied on memory to survive. Something here was affecting that, but he could not determine how. "Lieutenant," Mira said quietly, "are you okay?" Ethan glanced at her, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, just adjusting to this place." He did not mention the odd pull, the fleeting warmth of memory that seemed to twist reality. Humans faced danger every day. They survived because they recognized threats and acted decisively. He would do the same here. Lysera watched him closely, her gaze calculating but not cruel. She could sense his resistance, his intelligence, his cleverness. Unlike many species she had studied, humans did not yield easily. That spark, that stubborn refusal to submit to fate, intrigued her. She had expected fear, desperation, surrender. Instead, she saw strength, curiosity, and ingenuity. The qualities her people had admired in their allies, long before war had consumed them. "We should explore the palace," Ethan decided. "We need to know what resources we can use. There may be more survivors, more dangers." "We cannot stay in one place for long." Lysera inclined her head. "I will accompany you. There are places you cannot understand without guidance. You may wish to avoid the traps left behind by my people." Ethan noted her words. Traps meant defense systems, mechanisms designed to protect secrets and punish intruders. Humans could understand threats, analyze patterns, and adapt strategies. That adaptability, combined with courage, often gave them an edge. He would not underestimate this palace, nor the princess guiding them through it. As they moved through the corridors, Ethan studied every detail. Walls shimmered with alien inscriptions, floors hummed softly beneath their steps, and strange devices hovered in place, reacting to their presence. The humans marveled, but Ethan focused on patterns, weaknesses, and opportunities. Intelligence and observation were survival tools, just as essential as warmth or food. Lysera led them to a chamber filled with suspended spheres of light. Each sphere contained a miniature display of alien landscapes, cities, and technology. Ethan's eyes widened. These were archives, simulations, records of a civilization that had spanned centuries. "These are windows into my people's knowledge," Lysera explained. "Understanding them fully requires years of study, but you may glimpse what is necessary to survive." Ethan reached out, touching one sphere carefully. Images flickered across its surface. Battles, cities, strange machines, and scenes of diplomacy and discovery. Humans had always excelled at learning quickly, adapting from observation. He scanned the images for practical applications: shelter design, energy sources, defensive mechanisms. While the humans studied, Lysera watched Ethan. His mind was disciplined, focused, clever, qualities that defined humanity. Yet there was something else, a spark that drew her attention. She could influence him subtly, shaping perceptions without his knowledge. It was tempting, but she restrained herself. Humans valued agency. They would survive or fail based on their own choices, and that resilience fascinated her. Hours passed. The crew recovered some strength, and Ethan formulated a plan. They would use the palace's warmth and energy to repair their damaged suits and equipment, then explore the surface cautiously, mapping hazards and searching for other survivors. Humans were explorers and survivors. Strategy and ingenuity were their strengths. Night approached again, and the cold of Zyphera seeped back into the corridors. Ethan and Lysera returned to the central chamber. The bed-like structure from the first night awaited, glowing softly. Ethan considered it carefully. Survival required warmth, but his mind remembered the strange pull from before, the odd warmth of memory, the subtle feelings that were not entirely his own. He shook his head. Survival first, that was all that mattered. They could not allow emotion or uncertainty to cloud judgment. Humans had survived impossible odds through clarity of thought and decisive action. He lay down carefully, alert, keeping an eye on the alien princess as she moved nearby. Lysera observed him, sensing both his vigilance and the subtle influence of her powers. She wanted to reach him, to test the boundaries of perception, but she waited. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and stubborn. Their resilience was exactly what intrigued her. She would not push too far. Let him come to understand her, and perhaps he would see what she admired in humanity: the refusal to surrender, even when the odds were impossible. The night passed in quiet tension. Outside, the storm continued to rage, though less violently. Inside, the humans and Lysera adjusted to each other, learning, observing, surviving. The palace seemed alive, responsive to the presence of life and intelligence. Every pulse of light, every hum of energy was a reminder that survival here required more than physical strength. It demanded observation, intelligence, and courage. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, letting exhaustion take him. Tomorrow, they would explore further, adapt further, and learn the true potential of this palace and the alien woman who watched them. Humanity had survived so much, and here, on Zyphera, they would continue to prove their worth, not just through brute strength, but through intelligence, adaptability, and an unwavering determination to endure. And Lysera, the last of her people, would watch, intrigued by the species that could face death, cold and the unknown, and still rise with cleverness, courage, and hope. The corridors of the palace stretched endlessly, twisting in ways that defied human intuition. Each turn revealed a new marvel: walls that shimmered with color patterns like liquid glass, floors that shifted ever so slightly under weight, and strange symbols that pulsed with light as if alive. Ethan Cade led his team cautiously, his senses alert. Every movement, every sound could signal danger. Yet he could not suppress a sense of awe. Humans had never seen anything like this. Structures that seemed grown rather than built, energy flowing through walls like a silent river. Lysera followed closely, gliding almost effortlessly. Her presence was quiet, but impossible to ignore. Every human in the group felt it: subtle warmth and pressure at the edge of thought, a sensation that was not fully physical. Ethan kept reminding himself to focus. Survival required clarity, not fascination. Humans had endured far harsher conditions by relying on observation, reasoning, and ingenuity. That would continue to guide them here. The team reached a chamber that radiated cold. Inside, hovering devices moved in synchronized patterns, scanning the floor and walls. Ethan immediately recognized the threat: automated defense systems, remnants of Lysera's civilization. Each drone was armed with pulses of energy capable of incapacitating a human instantly. The team froze, knowing a misstep could trigger a lethal response. "Careful," Ethan whispered. "We cannot fight them head-on. We need a strategy." He knelt, examining the floor, the patterns of the drone's movements. Humans excelled at problem-solving, at turning apparent disadvantage into opportunity. If he could anticipate the drone's timing, he could lead them past the danger. Lysera watched, intrigued. Humans never paused in the face of danger to study it. They usually acted on instinct. But Ethan did both. He observed, calculated, and only then acted. His mind was sharp, adaptive, clever. She had underestimated him, and she recognized it immediately. Ethan motioned for the team to follow his lead. Using scraps of broken panels and some of the alien storage devices, he created makeshift barriers and decoys. Each step was deliberate. The drones moved, sensing motion and energy, but Ethan's clever manipulations allowed them to navigate the chamber without triggering the defenses. Mira and the others followed precisely, trusting his judgment, even when it defied instinct. Lysera's gaze lingered on Ethan. She had the power to bend perception subtly, to influence decisions without detection. But she refrained. Humans, she noted, were remarkably resilient when left to rely on their own reasoning. Even now she could sense the flicker of memory, the strange warmth of proximity from previous nights, but Ethan's mind remained disciplined. He felt something, yet he did not act without logic. That balance fascinated her. When they reached the far side of the chamber, the drones retracted into hidden panels, returning to dormancy. Ethan exhaled sharply, the tension leaving his shoulders. "Good work," he said quietly. "Observe, adapt, survive. That's what humans do." The team nodded, exhaustion etched into every face, yet pride shone in their eyes. They had survived the first major test inside the palace. Lysera spoke softly, almost to herself. "You are clever, human. Your kind is unlike any I expected." Ethan glanced at her, but she gave no further explanation. Humans were resilient, yes, but she had expected fear, surrender, or panic. He had shown none. That was the spark that fascinated her, the spark that could change everything. The next chamber was different. Light flooded in from crystal windows, revealing a vast array of alien machinery. Screens displayed intricate systems, planets, and energy flows. Ethan stepped forward cautiously. "This is incredible," he muttered. "These systems, they could help us repair suits, generate heat, even, maybe communicate." His mind raced. Every opportunity had to be seized. Humans survived because they adapted quickly, using resources in ways no one anticipated. Lysera moved beside him. "These are tools and knowledge from my people. Many require understanding you do not yet possess. But some are intuitive, and you may manipulate them if your mind is willing." Her words carried a subtle rhythm, almost hypnotic, brushing against Ethan's thoughts. He noticed it, but remained focused, grounding himself in observation and reasoning. Hours passed. The humans studied the machines, experimenting, learning, and applying ingenuity. They repaired suits, improvised heating devices, and even managed to power a small communications array using a combination of alien technology and human engineering. Lysera watched silently, impressed. Humans were fragile, yes, but their cleverness, adaptability, and determination were extraordinary. Ethan noticed something else. Memories from the night he had shared the bed-like structure with Lysera seemed altered. Details he could not fully explain. Warmth, closeness, fleeting impressions of care, intertwined with his recollection of pure survival. He frowned. Humans relied on memory for decisions and understanding, and something here was affecting that. Lysera, he realized, could influence perception subtly, and he had to remain vigilant. That evening, as the humans rested, Ethan approached Lysera. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why do you watch? Influence, even care?" Lysera's silver eyes reflected the chamber's glow. "I am drawn to resilience, to cleverness, to life that refuses to yield. You are Remarkable, Lieutenant. Your mind, your determination, it is unlike any human I expected. That is why I watch. Her voice carried warmth and authority, and the subtle influence at the edges of Ethan's mind pressed again, gentle but persistent. Ethan forced himself to step back mentally, reminding himself of survival. He had been trained to resist manipulation, to observe, reason, and act. Humans had survived predators, extreme environments, and impossible odds because of discipline and ingenuity. He could not let curiosity or fascination override his judgment. That night, danger came again. The palace walls shifted subtly, opening hidden passages. From the shadows emerged mechanized guardians, smaller, faster drones than before. Designed for pursuit, the humans reacted immediately, relying on instincts honed over years of survival training. Ethan directed them, exploiting patterns in the drone's movement, using walls, panels, and light pulses as shields. Lacera moved alongside him, guiding with subtle gestures. "They respond to thought and energy," she whispered. "Use your cleverness. Do not panic." Ethan nodded, eyes sharp. Humans survived because they adapted. He coordinated movements, led his team strategically, and turned the drone's own programming against them. Using a combination of decoys, rapid movement, and makeshift EMP bursts from repaired alien devices, they disabled the first wave. Then, using timing and observation, they trapped the remaining drones in energy stasis fields, neutralizing the threat without casualties. When the danger passed, Ethan exhaled, the adrenaline still coursing. Mira and the team stared in awe. "We did it," she said breathlessly. "We survived again." "Yes," Ethan said quietly, "because humans adapt. We observe, we plan, we act. That's why we survive." He glanced at Lysera. She was watching him, her expression unreadable but tinged with admiration. Humans had faced the impossible and prevailed, not through superior technology, but through intelligence, ingenuity, and unwavering determination. Lysera moved closer, almost imperceptibly brushing her hand near his shoulder. Ethan felt the familiar pull in his mind, the subtle warmth of memory and perception twisting slightly. He recognized it now for what it was: influence. Yet he did not recoil. Humans survive challenges by understanding threats, analyzing them, and acting decisively. He would survive this too. "You are clever," Lysera said softly, voice barely audible. "And brave. That combination is rare? Most species would have failed by now. Yet here you stand, intact, triumphant, unbroken." Ethan's chest tightened, partly from exertion, partly from the strange influence that brushed at his thoughts. Humans had survived because they understood themselves, their limits, and their strengths. This was no different, though the challenge was unlike anything they had faced. Alien guardians, psychic currents, and unknown technology all tested their limits, yet they endured. For hours after, the humans repaired equipment, organized supplies, and explored further chambers. Each discovery revealed more about Lysera's civilization: advanced energy systems, archives of knowledge, and defensive networks. Ethan's mind raced constantly, analyzing patterns, identifying practical applications, and preparing contingencies. Humans survived through cleverness, and he intended to use every ounce of it. Before the second night, Ethan found himself standing near Lysera, observing the patterns of light and energy flowing through the palace. "You are powerful," he admitted, "but we are not helpless. Humans survive through intelligence, observation, and adaptation. We find solutions, even in impossible situations." Lysera's silver eyes studied him, and for a moment the influence paused, almost respectful. "Yes," she said quietly. "That is what I admire. That is why I watch. That is why I am drawn to your kind." Ethan nodded, aware of the subtle psychic pull, the twisting warmth in his memory, yet grounded firmly in rational thought. Humans survived not by surrendering to the unknown, but by confronting it, understanding it, and using it to their advantage. That was why they had navigated this palace, survived the drones, and endured every challenge Zyphera had thrown at them so far. The night passed, the palace alive with quiet energy. Ethan lay on the bed-like structure, alert yet resting, thinking of the challenges to come. The storm came without warning. One moment the horizon was gliding silently through the frigid expanse of Zyphera's orbit, and the next, violent winds and shards of ice battered the ship, shuddering the hull. Lieutenant Ethan Cade gripped the console, teeth clenched as red lights flickered across the control panel. The crew scrambled, shouting over the alarms. Outside, the planet's frozen landscape stretched endlessly, jagged ice cliffs and crystalline spires catching the dim light of the distant sun. The ship had been designed for harsh environments, but Zyphera seemed determined to challenge every protocol humanity had devised. A sudden quake of metal and fire shook the cabin. Ethan shouted into the comms, "Brace for impact! Everyone, hold on!" The horizon bucked like a wild horse, systems failing one by one. Alarms wailed, and then darkness. When he opened his eyes, Ethan found himself lying among twisted panels and broken equipment. The air was thick with smoke and the bitter scent of scorched metal. Pain lanced through his side. He groaned, pushing himself upright. The ship's interior was a ruin, the floor cracked and warped, and only a few of the crew stirred nearby. Corporal Mira Jensen coughed, struggling to lift herself. "Lieutenant? Anyone alive?" Her voice was hoarse, trembling. Ethan forced a steadying hand onto her shoulder. "I'm here. We need to move. The ship isn't safe," he said, voice firm despite the throbbing pain in his ribs. The metal beneath them groaned, as if the wreck itself might collapse. "Follow me. We need shelter." They crawled through the wreckage, helping the injured and checking on the rest of the crew. Only a handful were unhurt, and the planet's unforgiving cold made their situation desperate. Outside, the wind shrieked like a living thing, carrying with it flakes of ice sharp enough to pierce the thickest human suit. Survival depended on finding cover, and quickly. Emotion could not interfere, even when it threatened to blur lines between necessity and feeling. The chamber they entered was vast, circular, with walls lined by crystalline conduits that pulsed with energy. At the center was a massive control sphere, hovering in the air, its surface alive with swirling lights. The air hummed more intensely here, a low vibration that resonated in their bones. Ethan studied it carefully. This was not just decoration. It was a control nexus, likely regulating the palace's energy and defenses. "We need to be careful," he whispered to Mira and the others. "This is the heart of the palace. It controls everything. If we trigger it incorrectly..." He left the sentence unfinished. The implication was clear. Failure could mean death. Humans had survived impossible odds before, but survival required patience, observation, and intellect. Lysera approached the sphere, her hand hovering just above it. The lights shifted subtly as she connected with it, her energy blending with the system. Ethan felt a pull in his mind again, sharper now, a brush of memory and warmth twisting thoughts. He shook it off, grounding himself. Observation first, analysis second, action third. That was humanity's way. He would not yield. Suddenly, alarms blared. Hidden panels along the walls opened, and mechanized guardians emerged. They were larger than before, faster, more agile, and designed to hunt intruders. Their glowing eyes scanned, their energy pulses ready to incapacitate anyone who moved wrong. The humans froze for a split second. Then Ethan shouted, "Form up! Use the walls! Adapt!" Humans survived by understanding patterns and exploiting them. Ethan observed the Guardians' movements, noting a rhythm. He pointed toward a series of alcoves. Move there, stay low, and watch for timing. Don't panic. Remember, observe, adapt, survive. The team split into positions, moving with precision. Using the alcoves and the palace's shifting architecture, they avoided direct confrontation. Ethan's mind raced, calculating distances, timing pulses, and predicting patterns they had learned from earlier encounters. Decoys, timing, and environmental manipulation could turn overwhelming threats into manageable challenges. Lysira's gaze followed him. She could have intervened, altered perception to make the fight easier, but she did not. Humans fascinated her most when left to their own devices. Their cleverness, courage, and resourcefulness were admirable because they were earned, not gifted. Even now, she felt the stirrings of respect, and something else, a growing attachment that she barely understood. The Guardians advanced. Ethan signaled, and the team used alien panels to create temporary barriers, redirecting energy pulses to confuse the machines. Mira tossed a device they had repaired, generating a localized pulse that temporarily disabled 2 Guardians. One by one, they maneuvered the creatures into energy traps Ethan had identified from observation. Humans survived not through brute force, but through clever strategy. Finally, the last Guardian attempted a flanking maneuver. Ethan acted instinctively, combining human reflex with his calculated observation. He triggered a device on the floor, redirecting energy beams that immobilized the Guardian. The chamber fell silent. The humans were breathing heavily, faces smeared with grime and sweat, but alive. Lysira studied Ethan. "You are exceptional," she said softly. "Clever, brave, adaptive. These qualities are rare, even among your species. You are worthy of attention." Ethan felt the tug in his mind again, warmth intertwining with memory. But he refused to yield. Humans had survived far worse. They adapted, observed, and persevered, even when the palace seemed to bend perception. Even when an alien mind brushed against his own, he held fast. Survival required clarity, not surrender. He turned back to the control sphere.
"We need to understand this," he said. "It controls the palace."
If we can manipulate it, we can secure safety, power, and knowledge. Humans survive by learning quickly and applying knowledge, guiding without dominating. The sphere responds to thought patterns, energy resonance, and intent. You may influence it, but you must understand its logic. Her words brushed against his mind subtly, shaping perception without forcing it. Ethan recognized the manipulation, yet he allowed it only as guidance, not control. Humans had agency. That agency was their strength. He reached out, studying the sphere's surface, observing the swirling lights. Patterns emerged, rhythms in the energy flow, sequences that suggested cause and effect. He instructed Mira to assist, combining human intuition with observation. Slowly, carefully, they manipulated the sphere, sending pulses that adjusted energy flow throughout the palace. Lights dimmed and brightened, conduits hummed with regulated power, and warmth spread through corridors that had been freezing moments before. For a brief moment, Ethan felt a surge of triumph. Humans had survived another challenge, not through alien technology, not through psychic influence, but through observation, intelligence, and action. Lysira's eyes gleamed with approval. She had expected humans to panic, fail, or act impulsively. Instead, they had prevailed, earning her admiration and attention. But their victory was temporary. The palace responded. Unstable energy cores, triggered by manipulation, began to overload. Floors trembled, walls shifted violently, and panels snapped open, revealing dangerous conduits of energy. Ethan realized the palace was now actively defending itself, testing them, pushing them to their limits. Survival required quick thinking and decisive action. Humans had always excelled in crises, and this was no different. "Evacuate to the alcoves!" Ethan shouted. "Use everything we've learned. Stay calm, stay aware, survive." The humans moved with practiced efficiency, dodging surges of energy, leaping over collapsing panels, and improvising barriers from debris. Ethan analyzed every movement of the palace itself, predicting shifts, calculating safe paths, and guiding the team. Their ingenuity turned what seemed like certain death into a series of calculated risks. Humans survived because they adapted, learned, and acted with precision. Lysera followed closely, her energy weaving through the chamber, subtly stabilizing some of the cores. She could have done more, but she refrained. Humans fascinated her most when they relied on themselves. She could guide, assist, and observe, but she would not dominate. The spark of resilience and cleverness in Ethan and his team deserved respect, not interference. After what felt like hours, the chamber settled, the energy cores stabilized, conduits hummed evenly, and the immediate danger receded. The humans were exhausted, their breaths heavy, faces streaked with grime and sweat. Yet they had endured. They had survived impossible odds, relying on nothing but human ingenuity, courage, and teamwork. Ethan sank to the floor briefly, rubbing his temples. "We survived because humans never give up," he said quietly. "We observe, adapt, and act. That's why we endure." Mira smiled faintly, nodding, and the team allowed themselves a rare moment of pride. Lysera approached him, her silver eyes reflecting the chamber's glow. "You are extraordinary, Lieutenant. Clever, brave, and resilient. I have observed many species, but none have faced such challenges with your combination of intellect and courage." Her words brushed against his mind again, weaving warmth into memory, but he remained aware, grounded. Humans survived by understanding threats, by observing carefully, by acting decisively. Emotion could not interfere. Ethan stood, looking at the stabilized chamber. They had survived drones, psychic influence, and the palace's defenses. They had endured the test of intellect, courage, and adaptability. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or most powerful, but their cleverness, ingenuity, and refusal to surrender made them formidable. That spark, that combination of intelligence and resilience, was why humanity endured. As they rested briefly, Lysera lingered nearby, her presence constant but unobtrusive. She sensed something growing between herself and the humans, particularly Ethan, a connection forged in survival, trust, and respect. She could influence, manipulate, or erase memories, but she chose not to. Humans valued agency, their choices, their cleverness, their courage. They deserved to remain authentic. The humans prepared to move deeper into the palace, knowing challenges awaited. Ethan's mind was already calculating, planning, observing. Humans survived because they acted, adapted, and persevered. And in Zyphera's palace, facing alien intelligence and psychic subtlety, they had proven once again why humanity endured against impossible odds. Lysera watched them, intrigued, impressed, and slowly captivated. Humans were fragile, yet brilliant, clever, brave, and enduring. They survived not because the universe favored them, but because they made it so. That spark, the spark of humanity, shone brighter than any alien light in the palace, and Lysera could not look away. Outside, Zyphera's storm had subsided. Inside, humans prepared to face new tests, ready to prove again that observation, intelligence, and courage were their greatest weapons. And Ethan Cade, aware of influence yet unbroken, knew that survival depended on what humanity always relied on: clarity, ingenuity, and unwavering determination. The palace waited. It would test them again, but humans, clever, adaptable, and unyielding, were ready. The palace trembled like a living thing. Energy pulsed through the walls, corridors shifted unpredictably, and alarms blared across the chambers. Ethan Cade and his team moved cautiously, alert to every flicker of light, every subtle vibration beneath their feet. They had survived drones, manipulated energy systems, and psychic influence, but the palace had grown restless. It was as if Zyphera itself sensed their presence and intended to test them one final time. Lysera walked beside Ethan, her silver eyes calm but alert. She could sense the tension in the palace, feel the potential collapse of energy cores, and yet she did not intervene fully. Humans had survived because they adapted, observed, and acted decisively. She wanted to see the limits of their ingenuity, to witness the spark that made humanity remarkable. "This place is unstable," Ethan said quietly, motioning toward the pulsating walls. "If we trigger the wrong system, the entire palace could collapse. We need to get out and take as much knowledge as we can carry." Lysera inclined her head. "The energy cores are overloading. You will need more than caution. You will need courage, cleverness, and trust in your instincts." Her words brushed against his mind subtly, the warmth of influence blending with rational thought. Ethan felt it, recognized it, but he refused to yield. Humans survived because they acted on observation and intelligence, not suggestion. The team advanced through the palace's twisting corridors. Panels snapped open, revealing traps designed centuries ago to guard knowledge. Surging energy flows threatened to scorch the floor, and shifting walls created dead ends in seconds. Ethan studied each pattern carefully. Humans survived by analyzing, predicting, and acting with precision. They could not rely on luck. They relied on cleverness. Suddenly, a conduit of raw energy arced toward the floor, sparking violently. Ethan leapt forward, pulling Mira to safety. Another crew member stumbled, but he caught her hand, dragging her behind a protective wall. Each action was calculated, deliberate. The palace responded, testing them. But humans adapted. Lysera followed closely, guiding them subtly. Her influence touched Ethan's mind again, blending memory with sensation, warmth with necessity. He felt the pull, but this time he recognized it fully. Survival depended on clarity, not confusion. He focused, turning the tug of emotion into a tool. Attention sharpened, perception heightened. Humans survived by using every advantage wisely, and he would do the same. The deeper they moved, the more dangerous the palace became. Massive energy conduits threatened to collapse, releasing destructive pulses. Guardian drones emerged from hidden panels, faster and more aggressive than ever. Ethan commanded the team with precision, coordinating movement, exploiting weaknesses, and using the environment to their advantage. They moved like a single organism, adapting to shifting threats with human ingenuity. At one point, a massive section of the floor gave way, revealing a chasm filled with flowing energy. Ethan analyzed it quickly, noting patterns in the pulses and the timing of energy bursts. He instructed the team to jump in sequence, using makeshift bridges of alien debris. One misstep, and they would fall into the deadly energy below. Humans survived by observing carefully, predicting outcomes, and acting decisively. One by one, they crossed safely. Lysera watched Ethan's leadership, her admiration deepening. Humans were clever, resilient, and brave. She had underestimated their determination. She could manipulate perception, erase memory, even control thought, but she refrained. Humans were remarkable when left to their own devices. Their ingenuity, their courage, their refusal to surrender, these were qualities worth witnessing, worth respecting. Finally, they reached the chamber that had once served as the palace's central nexus. The massive control sphere floated above, swirling with unstable energy. Sparks danced across its surface, arcs of power threatening to explode outward. Ethan assessed the situation, The sphere could stabilize the palace if manipulated correctly, or destroy it if triggered incorrectly. Humans survived because they could calculate risks, innovate under pressure, and act decisively. Lysera approached him. "This is the moment of truth, Lieutenant. Your people may shape the fate of this palace." Her voice brushed against his thoughts again. Warmth entwined with logic, yet he remained firm. Observation first, reasoning second, action third. Survival had always required clarity. Ethan moved carefully, studying the sphere's patterns. Energy pulses shifted rhythmically, creating windows of opportunity. He instructed Mira to assist, using a combination of alien controls and human ingenuity. Each adjustment required precise timing. One miscalculation, and the entire structure could collapse. Humans survived because they adapted, analyzed, and executed strategies with intelligence and courage. As they worked, Guardian drones appeared, attempting to halt their progress. Ethan coordinated the team, using barriers, decoys, and timing to neutralize the threat. Lysera observed silently, impressed by their ingenuity. She could have controlled the situation, removed the drones effortlessly, but she refrained. Humans' cleverness was earned through observation and action, not gifted by alien influence. Minutes felt like hours, but finally, the sphere stabilized. Energy flows harmonized, conduits pulsed steadily, and the palace calmed. The threat of collapse receded, leaving the humans standing, exhausted but triumphant. They had survived impossible odds, relying solely on intellect, ingenuity, and courage. Lysera stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Ethan. "You have done what few could. Your people have earned respect, not just from me, but from the palace itself. You survived where others would have failed." Ethan nodded, exhausted but alert. Humans survive because we adapt, observe, and act decisively. "That's all we've ever needed." He glanced at his team, pride swelling despite the fatigue. Each member had demonstrated cleverness and courage, proving humanity's enduring spark. Lysera's presence brushed against his mind, one final time. The warmth of influence, mingling with respect. He felt the tug, the subtle reshaping of memory, but he made a choice. Humans survived because they valued agency. He would not let perception be altered beyond understanding. The memory of survival, ingenuity, and courage remained entirely his. "We need to leave," Ethan said. "The palace is safe for now, but it will shift again. We take what we can, and we go." The humans moved quickly, gathering knowledge, recording systems, and repairing equipment for the journey home. Lysera assisted subtly, her guidance allowing them to carry more than they could have managed alone, yet never overriding their decisions. Humans survived because they took responsibility for their actions, relied on intelligence, and trusted their ingenuity. As they approached the exit, the palace trembled once more. Corridors collapsed behind them, energy pulses flared, and debris fell. Ethan calculated paths, directed his team, and adapted to each shifting danger. Humans had survived storms, hostile environments, psychic influence, and alien defenses. Their ingenuity, courage, and observation allowed them to endure where others would have perished. Finally, they emerged onto the frozen surface of Zephyra. The sky was dark, clouds swirling with storm remnants, but the immediate danger was behind them. The palace stood partially intact, humming faintly with residual energy. Ethan looked back, pride and awe mingling. Humans had survived an alien environment, psychic influence, and a civilization's defenses. They had endured where none had expected survival. Lysera stood beside him. "You have proven humanity's brilliance. Cleverness, courage, adaptability, these define your kind. I misjudged your potential." She hesitated, then added softly, "And I misjudged myself." Ethan nodded, understanding her meaning. Humans survived not through physical superiority alone, but through intelligence, ingenuity, and the unwavering refusal to surrender. Lysera had altered perception, subtly, yes, but humanity's clarity of thought and determination remained intact. That spark, the spark of life, courage, and cleverness, was uniquely human. "We should return to the ship," Ethan said. "We carry knowledge, technology, and proof that humans endure against impossible odds." Lysera smiled faintly, a gesture that carried centuries of history and loss. "I will remain behind, but know this. Your people are worthy of respect, of alliance, of understanding. And you, Lieutenant, you have shown qualities I have long admired. Intelligence tempered with courage, resilience tempered with judgment. These will carry your species far." Ethan felt the warmth again, the subtle intertwining of memory and perception. But he chose clarity. Humans survived because they valued agency, understood threats, and acted decisively. The connection, he felt, was real, forged in shared struggle, respect, and mutual recognition, not mere psychic trickery. The humans returned to their ship, battered, but alive, equipment repaired, knowledge recorded, and spirits renewed. They lifted off from Zyphera. Ethan piloted the horizon, watching the alien palace shrink beneath them, a monument to survival, intelligence, and the enduring spark of life. Lysera's presence lingered, a memory etched in their minds, not as manipulation, but as witness to humanity's brilliance. Humans had survived impossible odds, demonstrated cleverness against overwhelming power, and earned respect from a species far beyond their comprehension. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, Mira beside him. The team behind them. They had faced storms, alien guardians, psychic influence, and collapsing architecture, and survived. Humans survived because they adapted, observed, and acted with intelligence and courage. That was the spark that defined them, the spark that would carry them forward into the galaxy. Lysera's voice echoed faintly in their minds, a whisper of admiration and respect. Humans endure. Humans prevail. And humans are remarkable. Ethan smiled faintly, exhausted, but proud. Humanity had survived, adapted, and triumphed against alien power, and even against subtle manipulation. They had endured. That was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to survive. That was what it meant to shine, even in the cold, alien darkness of Zyphera. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of unknown worlds, challenges, and adventures. But humanity would endure. Humans would observe, adapt, and act. Humanity would survive, and humanity would prevail. Clever, brave, and unbroken, wherever the galaxy dared to challenge them. Through the storm, a massive shape loomed, an alien structure, half buried in ice, glinting faintly. Its design was elegant, organic, almost like it had grown from the frozen ground itself. Smooth surfaces twisted upward in impossible spirals, and strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls. It was not human, yet there was something undeniably familiar in the symmetry. "That's shelter," Ethan said, pointing toward the palace. "Move, now!" The crew struggled through the deep snow, the wind tearing at their suits. By the time they reached the entrance, exhaustion and frostbite had begun to claim them. The palace doors, massive and curved, slid open, almost as if they were alive. Inside, the temperature was shockingly mild, and the air hummed with low, almost imperceptible energy. They collapsed onto the polished floor. Ethan's mind raced. This place was not just a ruin. It had been inhabited, perhaps even recently. He moved carefully, scanning the surroundings. Crystalline light fixtures pulsed faintly, casting eerie patterns across the walls. The palace was vast, corridors stretching farther than any human eye could see.
"Lieutenant, look," Mira whispered.
In a circular chamber, A long, elegant bed-like structure sat in the center, covered in frost that melted in the warmth of the room. The material glimmered, like ice transformed into silk. "It's inviting," she said. Ethan frowned. They needed warmth to survive the night. Their suits were damaged, their energy supplies low, and outside, the storm would kill them within hours. He nodded. "We'll take turns. Everyone needs to rest, even briefly." "It's the only way we survive." No one objected. Survival instincts were stronger than pride. Ethan stepped forward, examining the bed. It seemed almost alive, responsive to their touch. The moment his hand brushed the surface, a soft glow ran up his arm. He stepped back sharply. "Careful," he warned, though curiosity burned in his chest. That night, the crew huddled close, sharing the bed-like structure to conserve warmth. Ethan sat at one end, Mira at the other, their bodies pressed together more from necessity than choice. The alien material adjusted, conforming to each body, providing comfort far beyond what a human could design. Across the room, shadows shifted. At first, Ethan thought it was the storm's reflection, but then he saw her, a figure suspended in a crystalline stasis tube. She was humanoid but taller, with elongated limbs and pale skin that shimmered like moonlight. Her hair flowed around her head in liquid silver strands, and her eyes, closed in slumber, seemed impossibly aware even in unconsciousness. Ethan stepped closer. His mind reeled. An alien? Alive? And here? How had she survived? The tube seemed damaged, frost cracking along the sides. He reached out instinctively, and as he did, the tube shivered. A soft sound escaped her lips, almost like a sigh, and a faint light pulsed from her chest. "Lieutenant, what is it?" Mira asked, moving closer. I don't know," Ethan replied, voice low. "She's alive. I think she's been asleep for centuries." He frowned, glancing around. "And something tells me this palace wasn't abandoned by accident." The night was long. Every so often, the alien woman moved slightly, imperceptibly, her presence filling the room with a strange energy. Ethan couldn't sleep, his mind tangled between exhaustion and curiosity. He wondered about the story she carried, the civilization she represented. Humans were resilient, but could they survive in a place like this alongside beings so advanced? By dawn, the storm had eased slightly. Ethan moved to the alien figure again. The light from her chest pulsed more steadily, almost like a heartbeat. He felt a twinge of fear. She was beautiful, impossibly so, but something in the way she existed, beyond human comprehension, made him uneasy. Yet he could not tear his eyes away. "This isn't just survival," he muttered. "We've stumbled into something monumental." Mira shook her head. "Focus, Ethan. Survive first. Understand later." Ethan nodded reluctantly. Survival had to come first. But even as he focused on immediate needs, repairing suits, tending to minor injuries, he could not shake the feeling that the alien woman was watching him. Not physically, but somehow, psychically. It was impossible to explain. He had been trained to notice deception, threats, danger, yet this presence felt different. He returned to the bed, the frost melting beneath his weight. Mira had already fallen asleep, her breathing steady. Ethan considered joining her, but he lingered at the edge, watching the alien. He wondered if she understood humans. Could she sense their fear, their determination? Could she recognize the spark that made humanity so stubbornly clever, even in the face of annihilation? Hours passed. The human crew stirred occasionally, groaning, shifting, trying to keep warm. Ethan remained vigilant, noting every creak, every pulse of light from the alien tube. And then, as if responding to his attention, the tube cracked slightly. a whisper of light escaping. Ethan froze. This was not the action of a machine. It was deliberate, intelligent. The alien's presence was awakening. He had heard tales of psychic species, beings who could influence minds, manipulate perception, even alter memories. He never believed them, until now. The realization hit him with a mix of awe and fear. Humanity had survived because of courage, wit, and adaptability. Could it survive here, against a being who operated on a level beyond understanding? And yet, even in fear, he felt a strange pull. Survival instinct intertwined with curiosity, and something else. Something unnameable. He settled onto the bed carefully, keeping one eye on the alien figure. The warmth of the material seeped through him, calming his racing heart. For a few moments, the chaos of the crash, the storm, the alien world outside, all seemed distant. Survival was simple. Stay warm, stay alive, stay alert. But beneath that simplicity, a new question emerged. What did this alien woman want? Why had she been here? And why did he feel, in some inexplicable way, that she was not just observing humanity, but him? The first night passed without incident, but Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Sci-fi was unforgiving, the palace full of secrets, and the alien woman, Lysera, as he would come to learn her name, was waking. Humanity had survived worse than storms and ice. They had survived impossible odds before. And if they were clever, if they adapted, if they refused to bow to fear, they might survive this too. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, letting exhaustion take him. Outside, the wind howled, but inside the palace, warmth persisted. For now, survival was possible. And in that fragile hope, a spark of something else began to grow. Curiosity, wonder, and a quiet determination to face whatever this alien world could throw at them. The palace seemed to breathe around them, alive in ways humans could only imagine. And in the heart of it, the alien figure stirred, sensing the presence of life, intelligence, and something far more human than she expected. Resilience. The morning light filtered through the crystalline walls of the palace, casting fractured rainbows across the icy floor. Ethan awoke stiff and sore, but alive. Mira had already risen, checking the perimeter and tending to the wounded crew members. The storm had slowed, but the air outside remained harsh and unwelcoming. Humans would continue to adapt, continue to survive, continue to shine even in the presence of beings far beyond their comprehension. That spark, the cleverness, resilience, and stubborn refusal to yield, was what made humanity remarkable. And Lysera, last of her people, would see it, learn from it, and perhaps respect it. Outside, Sci-fi's winds howled, but inside, humanity endured. They had survived storms, mechanical threats, an alien presence. They would survive more, because humans were resourceful, brave, and clever. And that cleverness, that determination, would carry them forward, deeper into the palace, and closer to the secrets Lysera guarded. The deeper the humans ventured into the palace, the more the environment seemed alive. Walls shifted subtly, floors hummed with energy, and every corridor appeared simultaneously familiar and alien. Ethan Cade led the team cautiously, eyes scanning for any signs of danger. Each step was deliberate. Sci-fi's palace was a puzzle, designed to challenge intelligence, perception, and adaptability. Humans had survived so far through sharp observation and quick thinking, and Ethan knew that those traits would be tested more than ever tonight. Lysera followed silently, her presence constant, almost magnetic. Her silver eyes glimmered in the ambient light as she moved, and Ethan could feel the subtle influence at the edges of his thoughts. It was not forceful, but insistent. A quiet tug at perception, making memory and emotion intertwine in strange ways. He recognized it now. She was altering the sensations of past events, twisting survival necessity into something warmer, something personal. Ethan forced himself to focus on logic, Humans survived because they observed, analyzed, and acted decisively. No alien presence, no psychic trick would compromise that. He reminded himself of their mission: survive, explore, understand.